They say betrayal cuts the deepest, but when it comes from blood, it doesn't just wound, rather it destroys. Imagine trusting two people with your life, only to find their loyalty torn apart by a single, unforgivable act. Tonight, we delve into a tale so twisted, so haunting, it will leave you questioning everyone around you. Prepare for deception, rage, and consequences that will send chills down your spine. But before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If you're ready for more bone-chilling stories of betrayal and crime, you won't want to miss what we have coming next. Nico Moretti wasn't just any man, he was a legend in the shadows, a feared mob boss, whose name sent shivers down spines, a man who ruled an empire of secrets, loyalty, and fear with an iron fist. He was untouchable, unstoppable. But behind the ruthless facade was a man with a heart, one that beat for two people above all: his stunning wife, Anna, and his father, Vito, the man who shaped him into the king of the underworld. They were his foundation, his reason for it all, or so he believed. Nico, sitting in his grand, dimly lit office surrounded by wealth, a mountain of cash, glimmering gold, and the sharp scent of power. He picks up a worn photo of Anna and Vito, their smiles frozen in time at a family gathering, glowing with a warmth Nico thought was real. To Nico, Anna wasn't just his wife, she was his sanctuary, his peace in a world of chaos. And Vito, he wasn't just his father, he was his mentor, his guiding hand through the darkness. But sometimes, the greatest betrayals come not from strangers, but from the very people you die for. And Nico was about to discover a betrayal so cruel, it would set his entire world on fire. At first, the changes were so small, they were almost invisible, so faint they could have been tricks of the mind, a lingering glance between Anna and Vito that seemed to last a heartbeat too long. The way their laughter danced through the room, when they thought no one was watching, and then there were the whispers, the hushed conversations that died the moment Nico walked in, replaced by the stiff smiles of people with something to hide. Nico, a man who built his empire on reading people, started to feel the familiar tug of suspicion. Still, he shoved the thoughts aside. He had bigger problems, rival gangs threatening his turf, dirty politicians demanding favors, and an empire that needed constant attention to stay on top. He told himself he was imagining it. After all, why would the two people he trusted most, his wife and his father, have anything to hide from him? But suspicion is a seed that grows in silence, and soon, Nico couldn't ignore the nagging unease clawing at his mind. Nico in his study, pouring a glass of whiskey late at night. He stares at the amber liquid swirling in his glass, his reflection fractured in the crystal. The cracks were no longer subtle, they were fractures, clear, undeniable. And they began to show more frequently. Nico started to notice how Anna seemed distracted when they were alone, how she avoided meeting his eyes when Vito was mentioned. He noticed how Vito, once confident and commanding, now seemed hesitant, his words carefully chosen when Nico was around. Nico, standing in the shadows of a grand hallway, watching Anna and Vito, they're seated too close, sharing a laugh that echoes through the mansion, soft and intimate. Anna playfully touches Vito's arm, and Nico's heart tightens like a vice. And then there was that moment of a laugh too warm, a touch too casual. It was subtle, yes, but not to Nico. He had built his empire by noticing the unnoticeable, by uncovering secrets others worked hard to bury, and this felt wrong. Nico's jaw clenches, his hands ball into fists at his sides. From the shadows, he narrows his eyes, the flicker of suspicion now a roaring fire in his chest. He whispers to himself, something's not right. But Nico Moretti was no fool. He wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. If something was being hidden from him, he'd find out. And when Nico Moretti found the truth, there was no stopping the storm that would follow. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, just another evening after a long day of ruling the streets. But as Nico Moretti drove through the storm, rain pelting his windshield like bullets, an unshakable unease settled in his chest. It wasn't the kind of anxiety that came from rival gangs or business deals gone south. No, this was something far more personal, far more primal, the kind of feeling you can't explain, but can't ignore. When he stepped into the grand foyer of his mansion, dripping with rain, the house felt Different. It was too quiet, too still, like the calm before an explosion. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the marble floors and towering chandeliers, but it was the faint sound above him that stopped Nico in his tracks. His ears perked as he strained to listen, a muffled laugh, a low whisper. It was coming from the master bedroom. Nico slowly ascends the grand staircase, his leather shoes leaving wet prints on the polished floor, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing with every step. He didn't know what he would find, but the sinking weight in his stomach told him it wouldn't be good. The rain outside matched the storm brewing inside him, anger, dread, and a growing suspicion that he couldn't ignore any longer. As he reached the top of the stairs, the sounds grew louder, soft laughter, intimate whispers, the kind of sounds meant to be shared between lovers. Nico's chest tightened, his breath quickening as he approached the door to his bedroom, his sanctuary, the one place in the world where he should have felt safe. Nico reaches out, his rain-soaked hand gripping the ornate brass doorknob. For a moment, he hesitates, the tension so thick it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. In that split second, Nico prayed he was wrong. He prayed it was nothing, but deep down, he already knew. And once that door opened, there would be no going back. What would you do if you were Nico? Would you rather walk away and never come back, or kick the door open, knowing that whatever you witness behind the door could haunt you for the rest of your life? Let us know in the comment as we proceed to see what happens next. Immediately the door creaks open. Nico's face, his expression shifted from suspicion to sheer devastation as his eyes lock on the scene before him. Anna and Vito, tangled in the silk sheets of the master bed, their faces frozen in horror as they realize they've been caught. A kind of confusion fills the atmosphere, the disbelief in Nico's eyes, the panic in Anna's face, and the guilt etched into Vito's features. Time seemed to stop. The rain outside pounded against the windows, thunder rumbling like a distant drumbeat, but inside the room, everything went silent. For a man who had seen it all, blood, betrayal, and death, this was the one sight Nico could never have prepared for. Nico's breathing grows heavier, the sound filling the room. His hands tremble as his eyes dart between his wife and his father, the two people he trusted most. The weight of their betrayal crushes him like a vice, leaving him paralyzed in the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. You in my house, in my bed. Neither Anna nor Vito speaks. They can't. The truth is written all over their faces, and it's a truth Nico cannot unsee. In that moment, something inside Nico snapped. The betrayal wasn't just a dagger, it was a sledgehammer, shattering every ounce of humanity he had left. In that moment, Nico wasn't just a betrayed husband or a furious son. He was a man unhinged, consumed by rage. Nico reaches for his gun, his hands trembling with fury. Nico through gritted teeth. You, both of you, in my house, in my bed. Anna gasps, covering herself with the sheets, while Vito scrambles to explain. Vito trying to explain. Nico, listen to me, it's not what it looks like. Nico interrupts with a roar. Not what it looks like. You betrayed me. You, my own flesh and blood. But there was no explaining, no justifying. In a flash, Nico pulled the trigger. Vito didn't even have time to plead. The room was suffocating, heavy with the metallic scent of blood, and the echo of a single gunshot that had shattered the silence moments before. The storm outside raged on, thunder shaking the walls as if the heavens themselves were condemning the act. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face, but she couldn't move. Her wide, tear-filled eyes were locked on the lifeless body of Vito sprawled across the silk sheets, the man she had betrayed her husband with, the man who was now gone forever. Across the room, Nico stood like a shadow, a towering figure of wrath and devastation. His gun, still warm in his hand, hung at his side, its weight almost insignificant compared to the burden in his chest. His face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with a fury that could rival the storm outside. He took slow, deliberate steps toward Anna, each one echoing in the room like a countdown to her fate. Nico towers over Anna, his shadow falling across her as she looks up at him, fear and regret etched into her face. Nico's voice is low, cold, and cutting like a blade. Do you even understand what you've done? Anna's lips quivered, but no words came. What could she say? There was no apology, no explanation that could undo what she had done. She knew that. Nico knew that. The silence stretched, broken only by the rain hammering against the windows. Nico raises the gun, pointing it directly at her, her tear-streaked face, her breath hitching as she stares down the barrel. Nico, in a voice devoid of emotion, "I should kill you too." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Anna closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable, her heart pounded in her chest, each beat feeling like her last. But then the unexpected happened. Nico lowered the gun, his hand trembling slightly as he stepped back. The fury in his eyes was replaced with something colder: disgust, contempt, and a chilling resolve. Nico's voice drops to a whisper, the kind that cuts deeper than any scream. "But death is too easy. You don't deserve that mercy. No, you'll live with this. Every day you'll wake up with the weight of his blood on your hands. And every time you close your eyes, you'll see his face. My father, your lover, that's your punishment." Anna's sobs broke through the silence, but Nico didn't flinch. He had already turned his back on her, his mind racing with a storm of emotions he couldn't name. As he walked toward the door, the room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Behind him, Anna's cries grew louder, more desperate, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. Nico pauses at the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim light from the hall. He glances over his shoulder one last time, his expression hard as stone, his voice low but firm. "This house is no longer yours. Pack your things and get out. If I ever see your face again, I won't hesitate." He left her there, broken and terrified, sitting in the bed that was now stained with betrayal and blood. As he walked down the grand hallway, his footsteps heavy on the marble floors, the weight of his actions began to settle. Nico knew he had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. But in his world, betrayal was the ultimate sin, and sins demanded blood. The man who built an empire on loyalty had been betrayed by the two people he trusted most, and in a single night, his world had crumbled. But Nico Moretti wasn't just a man, he was a force. And though this chapter was soaked in blood and heartbreak, he knew one thing for certain: the storm wasn't over, not yet. From that day forward, Nico Moretti became a shadow of the man he once was. His empire thrived larger, more powerful, and more feared than ever, but the man at its helm had transformed. The Nico who ruled with a code of loyalty and honor had been buried alongside his father that stormy night. What emerged was colder, harder, and far more dangerous. A man who no longer believed in loyalty, who saw betrayal lurking in every corner, even in the faces of those who swore allegiance to him. The scars left by that night weren't visible, but they ran deeper than any bullet wound ever could. Nico carried them in the way his gaze lingered too long on the people around him, in the way he spoke with sharp edges, and in the way he worked tirelessly, as if staying still might let his ghosts catch up to him. Nico sits alone in his grand, dimly lit office. The rain beats against the windows, mirroring the storm in his heart. A glass of whiskey sits untouched on the desk, the amber liquid reflecting the flicker of the fireplace nearby. He had everything: money, power, and an empire that ruled the city, but none of it mattered anymore. The betrayal had left a void that no amount of wealth or fear could fill. The man who once sought to protect those he loved now trusted no one, not even himself. As the fire crackled in the corner, Nico held the last remnant of his old life, a photograph. The edges were worn, the image faded, but it was clear: a smiling Anna, proud Vito, and Nico himself, standing between them, blissfully unaware of the storm that would one day destroy everything he believed in. Nico's hand tightens around the photo. He stares at it, his face an unreadable mask. Slowly he stands and walks toward the fireplace. The glow of the embers dances across his features, highlighting the coldness in his eyes. Nico, his voice low and bitter: "Loyalty, what a joke." He tosses the photograph into the flames, watching as it curls and blackens, the faces of his once beloved family disappearing into ash. In the world of crime, trust is the most dangerous gamble. It's a currency more valuable than gold, yet more fragile than glass. Nico had learned the hard way: trust too much, and you'll bleed for it. But Nico's story didn't end there. His heart may have turned to stone, but his ambition burned brighter than ever. With each passing day, his empire grew, his influence spreading like wildfire. Yet with every new victory, the weight of his betrayal grew heavier. His laughter became a distant memory, his smiles replaced with cold calculation. A montage of Nico's rise, shaking hands with powerful allies, overseeing illegal operations, watching his rivals fall one by one, each event darker than the last, the stakes growing higher. Betrayal changes a man. It sharpens his edges, hardens his heart, and turns his love into hate. For Nico Moretti, the cost of betrayal wasn't just paid in blood, it was paid with his soul. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, when the world slept and the mansion was silent, Nico couldn't escape the whispers of his past. The faces of Vito and Anna haunted him, flickering in the shadows like ghosts that refused to let go. No amount of power could extinguish the guilt, the rage, and the emptiness. Nico standing alone in front of the fireplace, the flames casting long shadows across the room. He lifts his glass of whiskey and stares into it, his reflection fractured in the amber liquid, and whispers to himself, "In this life, you either trust or you survive, but you can't do both." And so Nico Moretti chose survival, a life without trust, a life without love, because in his world, betrayal wasn't just a risk, it was inevitable, and the only way to win was to make sure you were the one left standing. What would you do if the people closest to you shattered your world? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling crime stories. See you in the next video.